You can easily spend thousands of pounds on a really good English wheel, or you can spend £400 on an English wheel from Metz Tools like I did. Did I get a bargain, or was it made of tofu and completely useless? And what do I want an English wheel for anyway, and how do you use one? Let's find out. Almost all car body panels have a curve in them, usually in more than one direction. It gives them strength, it makes them more aerodynamic, it stops them going boom, and it makes them not look like a Skip or a Tesla Cybertruck. So if you need to make bodywork repairs to your cars, and if they're obscure, rare, old cars like mine are that you can't get repair panels for anymore, then you're almost certainly going to need to find a way to put some sort of a curve into sheet metal, and that's exactly what an English wheel is for. I've bought Metz Tools kit before, and I thought it was pretty good stuff at very competitive prices. So I stuck my neck out and spent the £400 to get this English wheel. I paid for it with my own money, this isn't sponsored in any way. It's heavy, and so for your £400 it comes with a free pallet thrown in. I like this, as I think pallets are handy things to have because I can make things out of them. In fact, the UK supply chain problems are nothing to do with the shortage of lorry drivers or Brexit. They're because 40% of the country's pallet supply is currently stacked in my back garden waiting for me to find something useful to do with it. It didn't come with any instructions, or if it did, they blew away when I was unpacking the crate in my front garden. But that doesn't really matter, it's all pretty self-explanatory and straightforward, and anyway, now you've got this video to watch. You can watch it over and over again. If you click like, it'll show up in your favourites list on YouTube, and it'll make me happy too. We'll start with the legs, which are good and sturdy, and this cross piece is nice and solid. Don't waste any time looking for the missing nuts. There aren't any. These are some sort of a tapered bolt or tapered thread, which is a little bit of a weird solution, but it works pretty well and it all goes together nice and tight. This top half of the assembly is the serious part and the bit that you don't want to flex, and it's good and heavy, which is nice and reassuring, but not so heavy that you can't plonk it on top of the legs and line it all up. Get it all assembled before you tighten the bolts up so that there's a bit of wriggle room to line everything up, but the bolt holes were actually a pretty good fit on that basis, so full marks for Metz Tools for precision machining. The top wheel is heavy too. I was slightly foxed and wishing I had 3 hands for a while until I remembered that people invented clamps for just this sort of purpose, and then it was all quite straightforward. More expensive English wheels come with more reinforcement on these corners to absolutely minimise the amount of flex in the frame. If push comes to shove, you could grind off the paint and weld on some triangular reinforcing panels here, but I really don't think that's going to be necessary. It's pretty strong and solid. It's rated for 1.2mm steel, and it's perfectly fine for the 1mm that I'm using here, and probably will use for about 90% of the jobs I want it for. 1.2mm steel is plenty for car bodywork. It comes with 6 of these radius lower wheels and a handy rack that bolts on the side to keep them in. They don't seem to have any markings on them, but you can have fun just kind of squinting at them as you put them in the rack to work out what order they go in. People will sell you wheel sets separately if these turn out to be no good, but they seem to be hard and round, and that's all I'm asking of them really, so happy days. Actually using the English wheel is, on the face of it, not that difficult. You just put the sheet of metal between the wheels, tighten it up a bit, but not too much, and then just wheel it back and forth. There is a knack to it though. You need to track back and forth evenly and gradually so that you get a nice smooth curve. You also need to avoid going over the edge. If you wheel evenly across the whole sheet of metal, you'll just end up with a piece of metal that's slightly thinner and slightly wider. What you need to do is to avoid the edges so that you create a tension between the body of the sheet and the edges around it, and that's what puts the crown in it and gives it the strength and shape. And that's the harder part that takes lots of experience to get it right first time. It's understanding how the metal will behave and how to get the shape into it that you want, especially for complex shapes like whole front wings. But starting out doesn't seem to be unfathomably difficult, so I'm happily giving it a go. The other way to use the English wheel is to make a crude start on the shaping process with a hammer and a leather bag of sand like this. Then you can open up the wheel and use it to smooth out the dents that you've just made, gradually tightening it up as you go. Eventually you'll smooth it all out and have a really nicely shaped panel. Overall, it may not be the Mercedes Formula 1 team of metalworking tools, but then I'm not the Lewis Hamilton of metalworking either. It's going to be perfectly adequate for what I need to do, and by the time that any repair panels that I make have had the high spots and low spots sorted out with a bit of filler and a little bit of hammering, you're not going to notice any difference anyway. So I think it's £400 well spent and several £1,000s well saved for what I need. If you're a professional workshop, you might have other views and priorities, but as things stand, I'm counting this as a success and a bargain. I've now spent about £700 or so on tools for a job that would probably have cost me about half that if I'd taken it to a local garage to patch the Honda up, and I still don't have the Honda fixed. But I've got £700 or £800 worth of tools now and a reasonable basic metalworking shop that I can use to fabricate panels to repair some of the other cars, various of which will need metalwork done at some point, even though 2.5 of them are actually made of fiberglass. If you give someone a fish, you feed them for a day. If you teach someone to fish, you've given them a hobby that's even more dull to watch than mine is. So I've still got to invest some of my time. But my time would otherwise be spent just watching YouTube videos of other people doing car restoration, and subscribing and clicking like. If you want to see what I'm actually working on with the English wheel, then watch this next. Otherwise, maybe watch this random video instead. It's entirely up to you.